This is the Brain Software Podcast, episode 255. So welcome one and all to the World Hypnotic Epicenter, Toronto, Canada. I am Fritz Thompson, and today Jeff Mandel and I discuss a ton of cool things about hypnosis, triangulation, all kinds of awesome stuff. So stay with us.
Disclaimer. It's vitally important that you realize how important it is to use the password VOOTY from time to time. And to all those who insist we stop saying Loochie, we have a burning pair of questions for you. Can you really stop us? Can you stop us at all?
But Mike, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? Bite me crank, matey! So let's give a big Meaford, Ontario welcome to the world's foremost Anglo-Canadian hypnotist, the man who now reads music because he is the Keith Richards of hypnosis. Ladies and gentlemen, men and women, people of all kinds and aliens, Mike Mandel.
Yes, fantastic.
I like how I made
no pain to my spine. I know I was hovering in the hovery like Jack the frickin' Hoverer.
You're listening and not watching.
I'm looking at myself in the monitor. I'm looking freaking awesome today.
You are, buddy.
I got my British beret on. I've got my dark shadow shirt on. And it's just fantastic.
And you just celebrated your
71 years old this week.
Birthday.
71. And you know what? I want to talk about this
Let's
briefly.
do this now. Yeah.
There's a whole article I read today through Apple News. I get their news service. A whole article on aging and saying a different point of view, that it is actually a construct, a psychological construct. Now, obviously, people do physically age. There's poor replication between cells. If you have that theory of aging that you're not replicating properly and the cells are gradually degenerating. Sure, it's a good model.
However it works.
It works.
There's no stopping it. But
the thing is, my parents died in their 50s. I'm 71, and I'm way freaking younger at 71 than my dad was in his mid-50s. And my mom. They seemed old. And it's a different thing. The mindset now is people my age and beyond have come through the 60s and so on. And we're the ones who said, screw you, we're not getting old. We still listen to Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all these great bands. And somehow our mindset is, we're not old at 71. Whereas my parents' mindset was, we're in our 50s, we're old.
Okay, so I agree that should be the mindset, and that a lot of people have the mindset. And what I observe is that I don't notice a lot of older people with that mindset. I wish more people would have that mindset. I've adopted a simple mindset that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, that never describe yourself as old. No matter how old you actually are, never describe yourself as old, because that is an absolute statement rather than a relative statement saying I am older. We all are, right? At 13, you're older than you were at 9.
Yeah.
And I'm turning 50 soon. Well, that's a lot older than when I was 30, but I'm not old. I'm freaking young.
That's right,
I'm still diving around the volleyball court, sliding on that floor.
And I'd be still doing the British Jiu-Jitsu if it wasn't on the other side of the city. Now, this is interesting. So to me, 71 is the new 41.
Yeah, man.
I like to say the opposite for people. Someone says, I just turned 50. I say, well, they say 50 is the new 70. And they go, what?
I just thought of something. We never talked about this. But the idea of getting in touch with childhood ego states and acting young and playful and all that stuff. Well, when I was a kid and I had a twin bed, twin meaning a single bed. I don't know if that term is global, but a single person bed they call a twin bed in North America. It was pushed up against the wall. So to make my bed in the morning, I would just position myself where the pillow was. I'd be kneeling on my bed as a child, and I would just grab the sheets and make the bed from that position. Because now that I'm an adult, right, and I have a king-size bed, and you walk around it and all that. Well, I decided if I get up last, which is making it then my job to make the bed, instead of walking all around, I started doing the same thing I did when I was a kid. I just crawled up to the head of the bed and grabbed all the sheets and pulled them up and made the bed.
And how did that feel?
I felt like a kid again.
That's
and honestly, just got in touch with this childhood ego state. Now, what else can we do to act like kids? We can run and play and sing and do stupid
read
things
comic
and
books
dance and listen to fun music that we used to listen to in the 80s or the 70s or whatever childhood was to you.
To activate those ego states.
I never stopped listening to that music. I feel like a kid stuck listening to 80s music, and I love it all the time.
80s music is awesome. I was thinking of Sanctify Yourself. I was singing it when I got up this morning. Sanctify. It was a great song.
There's so many good songs.
Fantastic. Well, that's all very interesting. You made your bed, so Jordan Peterson will be proud of you.
I just hat tip. A nod to my two kids who are big Taylor Swift fans. And I guess Taylor Swift a couple of weeks ago put out a double album, 31 songs.
Yeah.
I have to say, I actually really love that music. It's really good chill music. Just background, that's
Taylor Swift. Scary to think I was old?
So, as far as some modern music goes,
yeah.
I freaking actually like Taylor Swift. And I'm starting to like country because of you.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was listening to Jamie Johnson.
Yeah. I got a Jamie Johnson t-shirt at home. I'm going to wear it for a podcast. It just looks amazing.
All right,
this is great.
Let's get on to the think
tank words, which are...
I think before we do that... no, that's fine. Let's do the think tank words.
In order, right?
And then
discussion point.
Yeah, then we'll talk about what we want.
Okay, I'm going to read the three, and you're going to start them up.
Okay.
All right. First one is, and these are from Savo Bukacek's think tank. This is miserable.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Monopoly.
Uh-oh.
Get out of jail. And runoff.
Runoff. Okay. So let's think about how these will then fit into the context of what we're about to talk about, which we haven't disclosed yet, but we'll see how they slot in. So miserable, well... I'm very direct with that one, that exactly what the word means. Miserable, people being unhappy, people wanting to find a new direction in their life, new activities to pull out of the funk, do something more fun. And actually this whole idea of aging that we talked about, just freaking act young and you won't be miserable. So that's what I think about. What about you?
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm turning it. I'm going French with it to Les Miserables.
Oh yeah.
So I think my favorite musical I've ever
in
seen.
Toronto right now. It's actually
playing. Back. We're going to see it again. I think I saw it in Melbourne, Australia too, and it was just amazing. But miserable. The wretched is what Les Miserables means, right? The wretched. Now, if you're wretched, you should stay away from cemeteries. Because you might meet Dracula.
Yeah, so there we go. We're playing the Dracula game again. Okay.
So notice I'm wearing Dark Shadows shirt. Dark Shadows, you don't know what this is, but this ties in.
Okay.
Dark Shadows was a TV show from 1966.
Oh, wow.
And I saw it on vacation in Cape Cod when I was a 13-year-old kid and went, what is this? And it was really all about vampires. It's a soap opera, but it was an afternoon
thing. Oh, yeah, you
thing.
mentioned this on a prior podcast.
Yeah, so I've got all 1,200 plus episodes, and I'm wading through them.
Yeah,
I got the shirt.
You came over to my house,
shirt, man,
and you said,
far out.
Remember you said to us, you said, so I actually bought a coffin.
And Vanessa goes, oh no. So what about Monopoly?
Okay, Monopoly. Board as a child, I think about the board game. So actually that triggers me back to childhood ego states yet again.
Interesting.
Yeah, even though I didn't know it at the time, but it means something in the world of business. A monopoly being a
controlling
company that has essentially controlling power over some industry. Like Microsoft was considered a monopoly back in the day, and the government forced it to take some
fragment or something. Now, did you used to play the board game Monopoly?
Yes.
Okay. I was cutthroat with it, and we'd play that you sign the board if you win, and mine was covered with my signature because I would use power of suggestion, and Moira would say, he's hypnotized you. When negotiating, I'd be cutthroat, and when someone else was negotiating, I'd tell him to lighten up, it's only a game. And he got so frustrated and mad. Anyway, here's my point. I would always get Boardwalk Park Place, the green ones too, Pacific, Pennsylvania, and I would force everyone else. I'd drive them down so they'd wind up sleeping in the urine-soaked hallways of Baltic Avenue.
Urine-soaked
I'd actually say that.
Okay, so speaking of urine-soaked highways, let's move on to runoff.
Not highways.
Hallways.
Okay.
Let's move to runoff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you are in Baltic Avenue and you're in urine-soaked hallways, best to get to a higher floor, I think.
Right, to run off.
Run off from who?
From
who?
From Dracula.
From Dracula.
Yeah, okay. I think of runoff being when there's too much water that falls, it has to run off somewhere.
Right, even down into a grave.
What do you do with excess? Think about that maybe in your life. What do you do with excess in your life that is unwanted?
Runoff.
Inappropriate excess.
Runoff to fluid, to water, to blood, to Dracula.
We're not talking about excess fun because there's never too much fun.
Too much.
Yeah.
I like jokes as long as they're not too funny.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, what about Monopoly?
Oh, we already did that one.
No, but how are we getting it to Dracula?
Oh, jeez.
I got it.
Okay, Monopoly to money to high stakes.
To wooden stakes.
To Dracula.
Oh, beautiful. That's better than mine.
All right, let's get on to the content.
Monopoly to monotony, sitting in a graveyard at night waiting for Dracula to come back to his grave so he can drive a stake through his heart.
We've spent 10 minutes talking about nothing.
We're at work right now, so it doesn't even matter. We don't even care. Okay, so let's get on with this.
All right, so I want to give you a bit of a preview of what's to come. What's on our notes here for today? We want to talk about the power of congruence, and we've got a cool story. We're going to answer a question that came in from Twitter about a particular individual and some body language and stuff. We're going to talk about Dr. David Spiegel's interview with Tim Ferriss because we want to actually flip the coin and address some of the things we agree with, that we fully agree with.
Yes.
We're going to mention how we just released your latest audio, Rendlesham, and we're going to address some medical questions from a doctor in Turkey who sent in some great questions.
Yes, a lung specialist.
And that's about it.
That's about it.
All right. So it's going
and then we're going to go have lunch.
All right. Good episode. So why don't we start with, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Power congruence, buddy.
All right. So the yesterday, this is Thursday we're recording.
It is.
This week. So yesterday morning, I'm at the kitchen counter. I posted about this on Facebook. I'm at the kitchen counter and I'm doing some work. My wife walks into the kitchen. I'm having my coffee. I've barely woken up yet.
Yeah.
She looks right at me and she says, "It's the first Tuesday of the month. What are you doing today?" And immediately panic set in my mind.
Because
the first Tuesday of the month is when we run our Q&A session for the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And I hadn't done anything. I hadn't sent out the email. I hadn't prepped the questions. I hadn't solicited the questions from our students. And in my mind, what's going on? And then I think back to, well, a few days ago, I looked at the calendar and it was next week. How could I have possibly made that mistake? And I picked up my phone to get onto Voxer,
as you do,
walkie-talkie app, to go, "Mike, we have the Q&A today at 4:00. We need to plan for it." And as I'm about to Vox you, I look at my phone and I realize it's actually Wednesday.
Yeah.
It was Wednesday, May 1st.
But it was her congruence, like how she delivered this so powerfully that you were,
I had already in the prior few days checked this on my calendar. I was certain. Yet, because she was so congruent about it and she's so organized, I immediately, this all bypassed the critical faculty where I would evaluate this, and I immediately went into reaction mode because
which is
of
emotional. So immediately you're vulnerable to it.
Crap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Started reacting as if this was reality, and only just because I happened to notice that it was Wednesday when I went to VoxU, I'm going, oh crap, she's wrong, not me. But that's how quickly we get caught up into suggestions, right? So it wasn't even suggested. It was a question which has an implied suggestion that it's
But there was a sense of panic that, oh, no, we're not ready for this, that immediately made it worse.
Yeah.
Because you're more vulnerable to the suggestion.
100%.
You should have been wearing your WWGGD bracelet and you would have been fine.
WWGGD.
What would Gus
Grissom do?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Next question.
So that was, I just think that's fun. And the empowering question about that is, how can you be more congruent, or where are other people's congruence inappropriately screwing you up? It's worth looking at that. What else do you want to say about that?
Nothing.
Okay.
Not a damn
nothing
thing
at all. All right. Mike, this one's for you.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to read this.
The platform X, otherwise known as
formerly known as Twitter.
We had a person ask a question. You want to read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, I'm working on a video about televangelist Kenneth Copeland, pointing out many things about his body language and expressions that show there's a good chance he's the devil or substandard individual. I was wondering if you had a chance to look into his body language, and if so, which one would you say stands out the most? He said, I found a few dozen, and the one I think, in my opinion, is his use of the finger point of doom. Is that reasonable? Well, I've seen quite a bit of video about Copeland. And
first, before you even answer this, though, we need to address the elephant in the room, which none of you can see, but the use of unnecessary quotes in this message. So the finger point of doom is correctly quoting something, I guess. If it's
but I found a few dozen is not.
But do not quote.
He's finger pointing.
Yeah, I'm finger waggling here. Do not quote when you're not actually quoting. Right?
A friend of mine got caught waggling.
There you go. Okay.
Listen, Ryan McDowell. He actually said his name.
Are you waggling? All right.
You stop waggling.
So now answer the guy's question. Why are you letting me interrupt you?
I'm only giving my opinion here. I've seen Copeland. I'm not going to say that I think he's really, really weird. And I'm certainly not going to say that he does this bizarre finger pointing of doom.
Keep your finger in the frame.
I'm not going to say any of that stuff, but I will say that his facial expressions kind of freak me out. He gets really bizarre and in people's faces and stuff. And I don't know, get away from me. I don't know what it is. I'm going to agree with you that there's something odd about his mannerisms and that, but this is purely my opinion. I'm not making any moral judgments other than saying it's odd.
All right, there you go.
Content-free answer,
I think, isn't that a better answer than a few words on Twitter?
Yeah, I think it is.
So I know this won't come out for a few weeks after you asked the question, but there you go.
Talk to me about David Spiegel.
All right, let's talk about David Spiegel, because we did a reaction video, and I think we discussed it on our podcast as well.
We did.
How Dr. David Spiegel from Stanford, he is an MD, a psychiatrist, and also a pretty darn skilled hypnotist with a ton of experience, ton of clinical experience. He did an interview with Tim Ferriss on the Tim Ferriss Show. We reacted to it, and really what we were picking on, and I think it's an important point.
I don't think we were picking on anything.
Picking on it fairly,
we were questioning one of the points.
We were opinionated about disagreeing with Spiegel on his sentiment that hypnotizability is this fixed thing. First of all, we're not big fans of how you measure hypnotizability. And second of all, we're not fans of claiming that it is static in nature and can't be changed.
Right.
Because it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, we're not going to rehash those points.
No.
But what we wanted to do today is flip the coin a little bit and actually cover some of the main points in the rest of the interview, because it was about an hour and 38 minutes or something. It's worth listening to. It's an excellent interview between Tim Ferriss, who is asking good questions about hypnosis, and David Spiegel, a academic and expert and clinician and doctor who's pretty smart
and researcher.
And he gives a lot of really good stories and information that we do agree with.
Right.
So we want to now, I don't know if you've got a chance to review all of the material, but I'll just summarize it.
You just lead off and we'll jump in like Jack the In-Jumper.
All right.
Go ahead.
So there were a few things here. First of all, he talked about hypnosis for PTSD, because in the beginning, Tim asked him how to explain how he got into hypnosis, and his father was involved in hypnosis. So that's what triggered his interest, and his father dealt with a lot of former military people and stuff, PTSD. What he explained about it is that it changes the way that our brains understand things from the past. So by looking at something in hypnosis, you can generate a new perspective, and it can change the way these memories are encoded in terms of what they mean to you, and that changes the response. So
which is actually a reframe.
Yeah.
It's a content or context reframe. Well, hypnosis for PTSD, that's when hypnosis really came into its own after the craziness in the late 1700s up through the finding their way through science in the 1800s. And then after World War I, with all these traumatized soldiers who had shell shock or battle fatigue, as they used to call it, going back home and you bump something on a table and you, PTSD, classic. And hypnosis was used to de-traumatize, and then they put it back on the shelf until World War II. But it is a remarkably powerful means of dealing with PTSD. I've done it myself many, many times.
Yeah, and I think we would largely agree. In fact, I don't think there's anything he said there that we would disagree with respect to hypnosis being useful for PTSD and how it works. At least that's one of the
right. I think part of the framework for me with it is when you run, if you are regressing the cause to clear PTSD, part of the reframe is that this is now in the past. It's no longer information jammed in the amygdala and the hippocampus and flashing like a crazy monkey.
Yes, like a crazy monkey.
Use the technical term.
Yeah.
It's reframed as a past event and is now integrated into our life script, so it makes sense. You know, PTSD, like phobias and all of that stuff, is treating a past event as though it's happening now.
Yes. And actually, this is going to tie really nicely in with the next point about pain, physical pain, because if you think about PTSD being things that happen in the past that have emotions get fired, right? Now, unconsciously, these emotions come up and people get triggered into some sort of past response, but there is an emotional component to it. And by changing that often changes the reaction. So then now the thing that used to set you off, give you the response, doesn't mean the same thing to you anymore. And you can actualize the memory. And
right. What I find interesting about using hypnosis for these sorts of things is we have many inroads. You know, we can change the submodalities of the event. We can do a reframe on it, but they all have the same general effect of eliminating its negative charge in your life today.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And so when Tim was asking Dr. David Spiegel, about pain and using hypnosis for pain, this was maybe towards the end of the interview, what is hypnosis really useful for? And Spiegel mentioned pain as one of the main things, which we, of course, very much agree with.
Concur.
And I really like the explanation that you can dissociate from it, but also understand the unconscious signal, because pain is an unconscious signal.
It's a signal.
And you can understand it differently. And he makes the clear point that what happens when you understand it differently is that we stop using our emotions to amplify the pain.
Yes.
Right.
And as we've said many times in our trainings in Toronto and online, there's notice how it becomes serious all of a sudden. There's a big difference between pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And with hypnosis, you can keep the pain, but eliminate the suffering to a large degree, which I find rather interesting. And we've said many times, people, oh, can you help me quit smoking? Well, everybody asks that about hypnosis, and it's not an area where hypnosis shines. But Spiegel is correct. In dealing with pain, with mollifying pain or eliminating it completely, hypnosis is a phenomenal method. And I think this is one of the areas where it's the most powerful. Even if we're just causing the brush endings of the nerves to move further apart through relaxation, it is powerful. Yeah.
All right. Now here's another area where I just freaking love that Spiegel brought this up, because we've definitely been thinking and talking a lot about this over the years. He really talks about thinking differently about medicine and brings up the idea that, well, why is hypnosis the last avenue that people go to get some help rather than the first thing that they consider when it can't make the problem worse? There's no side effects. You know, you try a drug or a surgery, and if it doesn't go well, it can screw you up even more. Right. Or have some bad result. Hypnosis will never do that. Oh, I'm in pain. Okay, well, let's use some hypnosis. What's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't work, or it only works a little bit. Then you need fewer pharmaceutical interventions, or you need a reduced surgery, or you can delay the surgery altogether. Like, that's what we're talking about here. Whereas people seem to go to hypnotists as their last resort. Well, this didn't work, and that didn't work, and this therapy.
Well, let's try this.
So, okay, let's try hypnosis. And they go, oh my goodness, it works. And his point is, it's because when somebody is, say, fixed with hypnosis, they don't go running back to their doctor and lobbying the doctor to start using hypnosis. Whereas pharmaceutical companies are lobbying doctors all the freaking time. That's their job. So it's really a marketing thing.
It's funny. You make me smile because it was a pharmaceutical junket that I did that day cruise on the ship on Lake Huron, and was doing the human lie detector and hit the doctor in the side of the head and said, hey, ADD boy, over here.
I love that.
Oh, it's fantastic. It was a junket.
So,
okay.
So thoughts about that. I mean, hypnosis really should be something people go to before permanent altering surgeries, pharmaceuticals that have bad
especially,
results.
Chris, especially since people are typically unaware that hypnosis has been a recognized medical modality in Canada, the US, and Britain since the 1950s.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't come up with that. That's 70 years ago. And it's a usable medical modality that produces real results.
That reminds me of some dick, I'm just going to say.
You're going to do a dick chant?
I don't know. No, I won't do a dick chant. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. But some dick on one of our Facebook posts, oh, it's hypnosis. It's pseudoscience. It doesn't work. Like, all right. And I think I wrote a comment, something to the effect of, well, you might want to explain that to the American Medical Association and British medical associations who accepted hypnosis as a legit medical modality back in the 1950s. But, you know, what do they know?
Yeah, what do they know? Well, I didn't read it, but I'm going to act as if I did. Here we go.
You're going to do it.
I'm going to give you the dick chant.
Okay.
I'm going to do it really
We haven't done this for a while.
Dick.
3 syllables.
Dick.
I love how you explain to me that
one
it's
syllable,
1 syllable,
2 syllables, 3 syllables.
Even though it's a 1 syllable word,
you can. Dick. It's fantastic.
All right, so that was
Don't
was
use it on bus drivers.
Now I've got one more that I just love this story.
Are you talking about the asthma story?
So again, I really encourage you all to go actually listen or watch, because it's on YouTube and on.
You said that already,
Spotify, et cetera. Yeah, there you go. I think it's worth listening to what Spiegel has to say and the questions that Tim Ferriss is asking. They're very good questions. This is the story. What's going on?
You're sitting like Captain Morgan.
Okay, this is the story that I really like the best. Right. He described a 15-year-old asthmatic girl.
Okay,
and she was hospitalized and nothing was working. She was having a panic attack, an asthma attack. They were considering anesthetizing her and giving her steroids. Like, she was in and out of the hospital all the time. And he was a young doctor, but he'd started doing a hypnosis course. And as a doctor, it was, your patient is in such and such a room, and he goes in there and he can hear the wheezing. You just like follow the sound of the wheezing.
The rails, yeah.
And he thinks, oh, hypnosis. Maybe no one's tried that. We should see what happens. He says, would you like to do a breathing exercise? She goes, yes. So he puts her in trance and simply offers direct suggestion in hypnosis. Because after he hypnotized her, he goes, oh, crap. We didn't get to the how do you deal with asthmatics in my hypnosis course yet, something to that effect.
Right,
so he just gets the idea, which I think is great, trusting your intuition. What do? He says, And every breath that you take will get easier and easier.
Thank you, Stan.
And he just continued to hammer on with those kinds of suggestions. As you breathe, it'll continue to get easier.
Yep.
Just direct suggestion and hypnosis. Within a few minutes, this girl was breathing normally. And he thinks, yes, right? That's amazing. Hypnosis is fantastic. Well,
it is amazing.
His intern, I guess it's called, the intern physician, says to him, oh, well, this nurse has filed a complaint against you because according to Massachusetts law, I
didn't like the way you said it at first.
Massachusetts? There we go. You can't hypnotize a minor without parental consent. And apparently he says, first of all, that's not an actual law. Second of all, the mother was in the room. Like, duh. Anyway, he got the idea. This is what I love about the personality here is they're telling you can't do this. The hospital eventually got the wise idea, well, maybe we should ask the patient. And the patient, of course, wanted this.
Right.
This is stupid. Like, oh, you can't do that because we don't understand it. But it worked and it avoided a whole bunch of drugs and bad stuff. But since we don't know anything about it, you bad man, you do not hypnotize. And he was like, yeah, screw you guys. And I'll never let this go. So that's what really lit him up as a young physician. I just thought that was an awesome story.
It was an awesome story.
All right.
I found the first 15 minutes really interesting.
So I really felt, it's the 9 Enneagram in me.
I know, it's good,
Since we gave him such a hard, he's not ever going to listen to us.
Spiegel's amazing. Like, we think the guy's great and he's truly an expert. We only disagreed about one.
It's really that one.
We totally agree about all lists. So if you ever meet us, Dr. Spiegel,
there are 2 subpoints to it. I think I would like the guy a lot. He seems like a cool guy.
Unfortunately, because we're like 23 minutes in, we now have to go to a commercial break.
We now bring you a report from Hypno North, Meaford, Ontario.
Yeah, how are you tonight? Thanks once again. Oh, it's your old pal Brado here. I'm finally bringing you up to speed as to what's going on in Grey County, at least as far as hypnosis goes and that. Well, actually, it's going surprisingly well, at least for me, for once in my pathetic Meaford life. So I was getting short of cash the other day, so I rounded up a bunch of wine and beer bottles that I found in the ditches and roadsides, and I spent the whole day driving around and picking them up and that. And I got enough after nearly 6 hours. I thought I'd cash them in, and that's what I did. But I used up so much gas in my Dodge Ram truck. All the frickin' money went to paying for gasoline, which just about filled to the point I was at before I started collecting the bottles in this godforsaken place. So the bottom line is I spent hours burning gas and gathering bottles, which just about put me right back where it was before the effing thing started and that. The big mistake was I told Eddard and Duder about my complete and total waste of time, and they went into their hyena laughs and staggered around my yard, falling over and choking with stupid smokers' coughs. I mean, these are the kind of dicks that wouldn't even help you bandage your arm if you chopped your hand off with a lawnmower, because they'd be laughing too hard to tie a freaking rag around your forearm so you didn't bleed to death. But I said things were good. And here's why. Billy Dials from the Red Rooster Diner in town had some anxiety about some dental work he had coming up, and he hired me for $20 to hypnotize him, which I did, and it worked just swell. Then I got a crazy idea when he was in trance, because he was a great subject in that. I handed him a bag of wooden tent pegs, my old 9x9 canvas tent, and told him he was a vampire hunter like Mike Mandel, and he took it really seriously in that. And then, here's the best part. I told him Eddard and Duder were the brides of Dracula, and he's been following them around and chasing them for a couple of nights now with a bag of tent pegs and a hammer. It's just freaking hilarious. He nearly caught Eddard out by the mailbox, but Duder's been hiding in the outhouse and only comes out when he needs a coffee or a pack of smokes, because Billy Dials keeps trying to drive a stake through his heart and then chop his head off with an axe and fill his mouth with garlic so he'll stay in his grave, which is hilarious. So there you have it. Life's actually fun up here now with those dicks hiding all the time and Billy Dials looking for him. So this has been your old pal Brado on the iPhone 5 saying thanks once again and good night.
All right, we are back. So a couple of quick things we want to mention. First of all, part 3 of the Mandel trilogy, Rendlesham, is now out. It is released to all members of the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy because we over-deliver. We give you cool stuff. Tell us about this whole trilogy.
Oh, man.
Started with, I'll just set the scene. That years ago, people would be listening to any of the Stress Relief, Peak Performance, Memory Power, and there was always this castle.
Recorded in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, and it's for another day in another trance.
Years.
And no one ever got to go to the castle. people kept asking. So we decided to create Journey to the Castle. I thought you were going to use the same guided imagery and actually go to the castle. You changed the world and said, no, totally different type of castle, totally different type of trance. And you invented, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've never seen anything like this.
The Inception
induction. Invented not only the Inception induction, but I think you invented the idea of this style of guided imagery, with this style of music, with this style of storytelling and characters. And I've never seen anything like it, because no one who has been trained in any other formal school of hypnosis would go, that's hypnosis. There's no formal induction of any kind. It's all a weird story, and it's very
But there's a huge induction in it.
It's all hypnotic. Anyway, I want to just have you explain what was the genesis of the trilogy, and where's it going now?
I did Journey to the Castle. We got such a great response, because you're setting your own intention at the beginning for whatever purpose you want to use it for, or you can let your unconscious decide. It's about 40 minutes. You put on headphones, nice and loud, and make sure you're not disturbed. You can lie down or sit down. And it takes people through almost like a hero's journey, where they come out of it more powerful than when they go in. But this led to people wanting more and more and more. So I wrote Sidonia, which we released.
Part 2.
Yeah,
a couple
which
years
is actually
ago.
a prequel.
Yeah.
Although I've designed them so you can listen to them in any order. Yeah. And some people were listening to them multiple times. So Sidonia is the next incarnation of it. And people loved it. And then so we made it a trilogy.
You had already planned it at that point.
Yeah, pretty
when
much,
you started writing Sidonia, you already knew it was going to be a trilogy.
I knew it'd be
and then when you started writing Rendlesham, Part 3, you already knew that it was going to become
a 7.
So
what do you call it?
There's
It's not
more
a
to come.
Septuagint. I don't know what it is.
We're going to call it. No, we're not going to call it.
I don't know what we're going to call it. But Rendlesham is the third. It's a trilogy right
Septology?
now. It's Septilogy. I don't know.
Something like that.
But interestingly, this all came to mind when we were at Rendlesham in Suffolk,
in
England.
2017
with Carl Smith. And I got my picture taken with the Rendlesham sign. And if you want to find out more about it, Google the Rendlesham Forest incident, which is what this is all based on. But unfortunately, we're going on. These are all interlocking stories, as you know.
Yes.
Many, many layers. But we're then going to be doing Whitechapel, Obsidian, Gormenghast, and finally Willoughby. It'll end with Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Next station stop. Willoughby. That's right.
The waiting.
All right. Listen to it.
So what I do want to mention, though, is we'll make sure that there's a link in the podcast show notes here, and we'll make sure we include this in the YouTube video description as well. Journey to the Castle is free. Anyone can opt in and download Journey to the Castle for free, and it's fabulous. And when you do that and you discover how much you freaking love it, and you want Sidonia, and you want Rendlesham, make sure you join the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, because they're free. They're included. You'll love it. Also, we're going to do something cool. We might give away some of these inside of the free Facebook group. We have a new Facebook group called Brain Software. It's got a longer title than that, but it starts with Brain Software. The link to get there is just go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/free group, all one word, free group. And you'll get a link that'll redirect you to our Facebook group. You can join it. And we've started a community. There's about almost 2,000 members as of this day.
Yes.
And it's going to be fun. We're going to use that as the way that we communicate with people in our community who aren't yet Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy members. So that's what we wanted to say about Rendlesham, Journey to the Castle. Now let's get on to...
Oh, this email from the nice doctor in Turkey. He's got a master's in psychology as well. So he is a psychologist. You need a master's to call yourself a psychologist. But he's an MD.
Smart guy.
And he sounds like a chest surgeon or a thoracic surgeon or at least a pneumatologist. So a lung specialist. And very good questions because, as you know, I had pneumonia twice, suffered terribly with it. And this interests me. His first question was, and before we answer these, let's just say we are not prescribing anything. We're just educating and answering a medical doctor's question
to the best of our ability,
giving him our opinion, and that's it.
All right.
And whether or not we happen to be entirely right,
all right, so
is irrelevant to it.
So he's got three things he's curious about.
Right.
You want to just address them in order?
Well, let's go through the three, and then we'll tear them apart. I mean, we'll look into them.
All right.
He said, I'm especially curious about the following topics. Number one, the effect of hypnosis on allergic rhinitis and asthma. And of course, Duder and Eddard will think you've got a rhino that's allergic, and that's what it means. The second one is pain due to lung cancer or long-term pain after chest surgery.
Even after
the wound
is healed.
So continuous pain. And the third one is a question, can endoscopic examination of the lung, which we call bronchoscopy, let's say bronchoscopy because it's the correct one,
Sure.
be performed with less or no medical sedation, because people are typically sedated for this. And he said success in this regard, of course, depends on patient compliance and hypnotherapist skill. But if the patient is willing and the hypnotherapist is skilled, what do you think the chances are of success of hypnosis in these matters? So again, we're not prescribing it. Here's my point of view on it. Rhinitis. Rhinitis is inflammation inside your nose, in the mucous membranes there. Now, this can be caused by many things. The typical one is an allergic response to some allergen. Hay fever is a type of rhinitis, whether it's goldenrod or
NLP allergy cure.
NLP allergy cure.
So-called cure. We're not going to say it.
But as you know, Rob Ingram, after the class, he posted a video. He had a terrible rhinitis and allergic response to lavender.
And lilac.
Lilac. Well, pick those.
And grass and all kinds of other stuff.
But that was a specific.
All kinds of stuff that grows outside.
And let's just say, if you know what the specific allergen is, it's much more powerful. You have to differentiate. But he had someone run the allergy treatment on him in our class, and then immediately was smelling this with no reaction whatsoever. So we'd say we'd use the NLP/hypnosis allergy treatment, which is not really a cure. We're not saying we cure anything. We call it, as Diltz did, immune system retraining, which is what it is. Now, the other
it may work great.
The other thing is relaxation reduces stress, which of course is going to make any kind of rhinitis worse. Stress is going to make anything worse because stress tends to increase cortisol, which increases immediately any kind of inflammatory response. And this thing, because rhinitis ends in itis, I believe it was Dabney Ewan who said this. Anytime you're seeing itis on the end, it means inflammation.
Right.
So if you say, rhinitis or penisitis,
bronchitis,
or any of these things, right? Any of these things. Sorry, doctor, I couldn't resist.
So funny.
But I admit it, I'm 71. I can get away with this stuff. Just put it down.
This is why you listen to the Brain Software podcast.
That's why I don't listen to it. So anything with itis on implies inflammation, and anything that will respond hypnotically will respond to anti-inflammatory drugs, even NSAIDs, so non-specific,
to respond to hypnosis.
or will respond to antihistamines. Anything that'll respond to anti-inflammatory or antihistamine drugs will tend to respond to hypnosis very well.
Right.
So as soon as I hear the itis on the end, I figure you're going to get some kind of response. You can't go wrong with good old direct suggestion in hypnosis. As we said a million times.
As we just talked about earlier in this episode with Dr. Spiegel, when he was young as a doctor and working with the 15-year-old asthmatic patient in the hospital, hence the asthma question here. So clearly there's some case study evidence that it works on asthma. There you go.
Yes, that was very good. So, and also the whole.
Do you like those awkward pauses?
Monocytes produce inflammation. They can also be tied to anti-inflammatory effects, but monocytes can be switched off through intermittent fasting. And which reduces inflammation. And also, probably, I'm thinking direct suggestion in hypnosis can affect monocytes. If you posit the existence of these and what they do, so the unconscious goes, oh yeah, those things. Right. That was a bit of a Rick Green there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then treat it with hypnosis, and also never forget the power of metaphor with all of these things. You mentioned earlier about pain and Spiegel's great work with pain and how it's a signal. And let's keep in mind what our friend Stephen Blake with Old Pain to Go, his major premise is that pain is a signal. And when the signal is understood, and unnecessary. I got the signal. I know I sprained my ankle. Yeah.
Results. The feeling is unnecessary at that point.
And can switch off.
Yeah, and that actually might lead nicely into question number 2.
Let's not forget metaphor.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying telling metaphors can help with all kinds of things. Hello, we're using Milton Erickson's techniques at this point.
There you go.
Would be. What about asthma?
Well, yeah, we already talked about asthma.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's talk about it in hypnosis very specifically here. Because you have a bronchospasm and mucus production with asthma. Now, I've Googled this very carefully and looked, and it's the opinion of many medical groups that asthma is chronic. Now, with acute means sudden onset, and then it goes away again. Chronic typically means you're going to die with it. It doesn't go away. It doesn't just mean a long period of time, taken from the Greek chronos, but I just throw that in just to show you that I do pay attention to what I say. So when you've got the bronchial spasms, I've had asthma. And I disagree with this entire idea that it cannot be cured, that it never goes away. Because when I had pneumonia in 1999 going into 2000, that winter I almost freaking died. I had 14 liters of antibiotics and all of this stuff. The doctor came in and he said to me, how long have you had asthma? I said, I don't have asthma. He said, yes, you do. He said, how far can you walk? And I said, walk. I'm a freaking runner. I'm running 6 miles. He just couldn't believe it because the asthma was so bad. The rattling and so on.
It had
wheezing
happened because of the
It was a pneumonia side effect. They put me on 2 puffers.
Oh, man.
And I went, bloody hell. I'm not using
and I
these
bet
packets.
those doctors probably thought you'd be on those for the rest of your life.
Well, it went away. Yeah. So I'm saying it can be overcome. Now, hypnosis with asthma can be very supportive in reducing attacks by reducing the inflammation and retraining the subject to relax the muscle tension, the bronchial tension in the airways.
A lot better than the stress response. The asthma, when I was a kid and I would get asthma attacks, it would stress me out because I could feel it coming on, right? So what if we change that stress response, which only makes it worse, into what you just described.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you hypnotize the person and you set up a signal. So as soon as they begin to feel the tension and the constricted breathing, they immediately pause and do breathing exercises instead and let it go.
Love it.
I would think even the 6-step tapping may have an effect on it. It's not been practiced as far as I know, but it's interesting to look at. And when in doubt, direct suggestion in hypnosis. It is the most underrated thing in hypnosis because I said Bernheim and Lebo in Nancy, France. That's the only thing they did. And they were both medical doctors and got spectacular results. Throw the 6-step tapping. And again, somebody suffering from asthma a lot, I have found any breathing thing I had got a lot better once I stopped eating wheat. So that's just me. Keep it in mind. And you can stop an asthma attack. I have heard, I'm not prescribing, if you feel an exercise induced asthma attack coming on, of course, you can use self-hypnosis, but you don't time it then. At that moment, drink 2 glasses of water and put a big pinch of Himalayan salt under your tongue. And immediately, like within just a few minutes, you'll often feel a lot better.
Can't make it worse.
Make it worse.
Worth testing it. Let's move on to the number 2 question here, which was pain due to
lung cancer or post-surgical pain. Well, any pain. Hypnosis is great in managing it, whether from cancer or surgery, but it really depends on the patient, how much the person is suffering. It may make it more difficult to get them into the right state, to mollify it to a large degree, and it depends on the skill of the hypnotist as well.
And it'll most likely at least reduce the amount of pain control drugs that is required.
This is it,
right?
which takes us back to Dave Ellman. In his book, Hypnotherapy, he talked about teaching dentists. He only taught doctors and dentists. And Ellman, who did some phenomenal work. By the way, I got a happy birthday greeting from Cheryl Ellman.
Oh, that's awesome.
Colonel Ellman, which is great.
Cheryl.
Hello, Cheryl. Anyway, Dave Ellman, he would work with dentists and tell them, use only 90% as much Novocaine or lidocaine or xylocaine that you normally use after giving them all these suggestions for pain relief or numbness.
And it would work.
And that would work. And you get them to keep cutting it down. Eventually, they'd be able to give 10% of what they used to give and still get adequate pain relief from it. Now, so the same thing.
There's also, because he mentions in his question here, long-term pain after chest surgery, despite the wound healing. So do you think there might be an emotional component to that pain where the wound's already healed, the person's had this chest surgery, the wound's healed, and they still feel pain? Wouldn't that be a ripe opportunity to reframe that message as a reminder that the healing has already happened?
I love it.
And that would you have to interview people and always adapt your intervention to what you learn during that interview. But if I got any sense that they were freaked out by this happening, I would reframe this all as being in the past and change the emotional components so that, as Spiegel would point out, that amplification, the emotions amplifying the pain. Instead, can we switch that over, other end of the spectrum? Now the emotions are gratitude for having recovered from that past situation.
Well, this is just it. It's certainly something that is going to require some experimentation on the part of the doctor, but I think he may develop his own methods based on the sorts of things we're talking about. And bronchoscopy, I mean, think about it. You're shoving a freaking tube with a camera down into your lungs, and of course they sedate you for this. I was threatened with that the second time I got pneumonia. My pneumatologist, Dr. Fraser, he said to me, if you get this again, he said, we're going to be knocking you out and scoping you to find out what's going on down there. Because he thought, well, maybe it's a precancerous thing. I said, no, I'm just not getting it anymore.
What do you think about an endoscope?
Because you're going through cilia on the way down. That's the cough reflex and touching the uvula, the gag reflex. So obviously, you've got to be very, very careful with this. And obviously, nobody who's watching this is going to try it at home unless they're a doctor. But I think maybe the Esdale state would work for this.
I think that it would. That said, I can't imagine many doctors wanting to go with hypnosis as their first solution.
Oh, I agree.
Because it takes longer. It might be more difficult because doctors aren't typically trained in hypnosis anyway. And it would look pretty bad if it didn't work, right? When you could just sedate the person. So I think there would have to be some circumstances where you knew that they weren't going to tolerate the sedation in some way, or they were just totally freaked out by the idea of being sedated and they really wanted to try this. The client, the patient in this case, because it's a medical situation, would need to be involved in that.
Well, bro, I'm big on self-hypnosis. I used it when I slipped in a bathtub in Winnipeg and was taken to the hospital in a freaking ambulance. And I had to use self-hypnosis in the ambulance just because the spasm in my back was so bad. But would I want to undergo bronchoscopy at freaking TV camera?
I wouldn't.
It's not a big Sony camera, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Freaking front camera. Yeah, whatever. Okay. But no, I wouldn't want to do that. I think I'd be insisting, knock me the hell out. I'm not going for this.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There we go.
I hope that's of some help. We have one final question. This came in from a guy online, sent an email, and he said, I often notice sometimes when people are being interviewed, they shake their head no while saying something very powerful. I tend to believe they truly believe it to be true, though. I notice people being interviewed after great sports performances, politicians who I trust less. Yeah, good point. The most simple way to interpret it is they're lying in some way. In many cases, I doubt that's the full answer. The encapsulation of this is this. If you're watching someone and they're making some very strong statement, and I believe it, I really believe it, and they're shaking their head no, I always go with the analog behavior.
Yeah, I have a little bit more of a nuanced way of thinking about it. So let's say that we're having a conversation about sports performer, a particular athlete, and we say something like, the first one that came to mind is the Maple Leafs, Ty Domi, which used to be one of their players. And if I said to you something like, Ty Domi, yeah, he's a really excellent hockey player, and you went, he's such and such, you could believe, yeah, he's a great player, but be thinking in your head about something dumb he did, like a little exception to the rule, like, in your head you're thinking, and that situation in last night's game, that was a big mistake. But otherwise, other than that, he's generally a very good player. That's what I think could be going on.
What if he's just answering unconsciously about Ty Domi and he's shaking his head because he's thinking of the meal he had last night and he doesn't want the same thing in leftovers tonight? Where do we draw the line?
I don't. I'm saying you can't know for sure. Generally speaking, unless there's something that would cloud it, I think you're right, that the unconscious signal, oh yes, I really love that person.
Well, I told you, I had a client and she's eyes so wide years ago, and she said, no, Mike, I love my husband. I really love, their relationship fell apart shortly after. But the analog was so strong saying no.
Yeah. It would be context dependent. Like if somebody says, I love my husband, if it was in response to someone saying, you should get divorced, then I could see. No,
So the bottom line is generally, and Chris and I are in complete agreement here, but the bottom line is, because we always present a united front against the world.
Yes.
That's with September Man.
That's
and
what
Michael C. Anthony.
Riders do.
You got it. Now, here's the thing. Yes. We agree that it seems to be, generally speaking, you can accept the analog behavior, but there will be exceptions to the rule. So you should not condemn anyone on the analog stuff.
I
could crack my neck, but I won't.
There you have it. So we've gone over time.
We're done, buddy. We're freaking done. So let's thank you, Jim C. That was your question. And we now have an empowering question, Chris.
To wrap it all up.
Then we have a Metafive.
Yeah, let's go with it. All right. So empowering question to wrap up podcast 255 is, what is the number one singularly effective thing that I can do right now to enhance my own life and the lives of those close to me?
That's right. All right, here's the Metafive, one better than Meta4. As you know, Christmas was a good one for me this year, as was my birthday. And at Christmas, my wife bought me that amazing Ken Burns documentary series, 18 hours, 16 hours, whatever, country music, right from its inception with the singing Brakeman, Jimmy Rogers, right up to Shania Twain. We won't go there. I understand she sings too. Anyway, and Shania, if you're watching, come on our show. We'd love to have you here. Okay, let's try to get back. I'm stuck in a side thing here. Anyway, the bottom line is, I love that. And I became fascinated by country music, especially Jamie Johnson right now. If you've not listened to this guy, listen to him. But what did my wife get me for my birthday? A stack of Ken Burns documentaries.
Nice.
One on Benjamin Franklin, one on American national parks, and an 18-hour or 19-hour documentary on jazz, the formation all to the present day. So now, once again, I'm going to be submerging into a music of a different kind than I normally listen to and becoming an expert. That's right.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been Brain Software episode 255 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson, not actually named Fritz Thompson, but it sounds funny to say it. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check out our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Make sure you join our new free community, MikeMandelHypnosis.com/free group. It's awesome. It's all about brain software. And if you're interested in coming to Toronto, the May class, well, by the time this goes live, we're probably already in the classroom. May class is sold out. It's long been sold out. November class is already selling out. I think it's more than half full already. It's crazy. MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again. And
we are not witches.